Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Meloni, Tolkien and Italy's Fellowship of the Ring. Colorado's painful end to season included fractured back for Shadur Sanders. Super intelligent AI, can chatbots think? The checkbook COP, UAE's $200 billion bid for climate influence. In New Zealand's crackdown on crime, what part can Maori wardens play? Meloni, Tolkien and Italy's Fellowship of the Ring. Financial Times. The Lord of the Rings is being seen as an allegory for the far-right political ideology of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government in Italy, with the country's National Gallery of Modern and Contemporary Art hosting an exhibition dedicated to British author J.R.R. Tolkien. The show, organized by Culture Minister Gennaro Sangiuliano, is part of a reverence for Tolkien's work by members of Meloni's ruling Brothers of Italy party, who view the story as a metaphor for their fight to protect Italy's culture from external threats. Colorado's painful end to season included fractured back for Shadur Sanders. Washington Post. Shadur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, suffered a fractured back in the team's season finale against Utah. The injury required Sanders to sit out the game, which the Buffaloes lost 23-17. The nature of the injury remains unclear, but Sanders was sacked an NCAA leading 52 times this season. The injury is not expected to affect Sanders' future, as he is expected to return to Colorado for his senior season. Sanders set a single-season passing record for the Buffaloes this season, throwing for 3,230 yards. Despite Sanders' injury, Deion Sanders is optimistic about the progress the Buffaloes have made this season. The team improved from a 1-11 record this season before Sanders arrived to a 4-8 record this season. The Buffaloes were also more competitive in their games this season, losing by 7 points or fewer in 5 of their 8 losses. However, Sanders believes the program needs more financial support to compete with the top teams in the country. Super intelligent AI, can chatbots think? Financial Times. Generative AI systems like OpenAI's ChatGPT have been praised for their ability to engage in legal reasoning, write essays, and solve complex problems. However, in this podcast episode, the hosts speak to experts to understand what is really happening beneath the surface. Emily Bender, a professor of computational linguistics, explains that while these AI systems can generate human-like text, they lack true understanding and consciousness. Pablo Arredondo from Case Text, Melanie Mitchell from the Santa Fe Institute, and Constantine Arcudas, an AI expert who worked on Amazon's Alexa, also provide insights into the limitations and challenges of generative AI systems. The checkbook COP, UAE's $200 billion bid for climate influence. Financial Times. The UAE's investment in renewable energy projects around the world is being seen by critics as an attempt to greenwash its role as one of the largest producers of hydrocarbons. The UAE is expected to announce more deals at the upcoming COP28 climate summit, and there are plans for a multi-billion-dollar climate finance fund backed by the UAE to encourage private investment in green projects. The UAE has also been actively investing in developing countries, including signing energy deals in Turkey, Egypt and Malaysia. However, critics argue that the UAE's investment strategy may be an attempt to secure agreements that allow it to continue pumping oil and gas, while appearing to be a climate leader through its support for renewable energy projects. In New Zealand's crackdown on crime, what part can Maori wardens play? New York Times. New Zealand has a high rate of incarceration and has a long history of imprisoning individuals for relatively minor crimes. In recent months, a cost of living crisis has hit New Zealanders hard. Food prices in October rose 6.3%, almost twice the rate in the United States. The country's new prime minister has said he will restore law and order, vowing to send young offenders to boot camps and reverse efforts to reduce prison populations. However, experts say that the underlying issues will remain unresolved. Many Maori wardens, the majority of whom are women over 40, know these issues firsthand: economic hardship, alienation, addiction. Many countries are wrestling with practical and philosophical questions about law enforcement, including the threat of police brutality, the harms of incarceration and the factors that drive offenders. The likes of the Maori wardens, who have been active in New Zealand for around a century, can present compelling alternatives for managing low-level crime. Could a drug give your pet more dog years? New York Times. Biotech firm Loyal has moved one step closer to bringing its longevity drug for dogs to market. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has confirmed that data provided by Loyal are sufficient to show there is a reasonable expectation of effectiveness for the drug. It will now review the company's safety and manufacturing data, but conditional approval could be granted next year. The drug, LOY001, is designed to extend canine lifespans. Loyal hopes to claim 1 year of healthy lifespan extension, but it has not yet demonstrated that it does lengthen dogs' lives. The firm is also recruiting dogs for a clinical trial of another drug candidate, LOY002. Erasing Tibet. Foreign Affairs. The Chinese government is using residential schools in Tibet to suppress the Tibetan identity and replace it with a Chinese one. Nearly 1 million Tibetan children live in state-run residential schools where they are subjected to a highly politicized curriculum that aims to strip them of their mother tongue, religion, and culture. Children as young as 4 have been separated from their parents and enrolled in boarding kindergartens under a recruitment strategy based largely on coercion. The Chinese government has faced criticism from human rights groups and has been the subject of congressional hearings and formal inquiries by the United States, Canada, and the United Nations. In August, the U.S. Secretary of State announced visa sanctions against Chinese officials responsible for the residential school program. The suppression of the Tibetan language is a key focus of the Chinese government's efforts to erase Tibetan identity. Mandarin has been imposed as the sole vehicle for interaction in and outside the classroom, with Tibetan language learning being significantly diminished. The residential schools aim to break the transmission of culture and language from one generation to the next, with children losing their ability to converse in Tibetan and becoming estranged from their families. The Chinese government's approach to residential schools in Tibet bears similarities to the church-run boarding schools that were used to assimilate indigenous children in Australia and North America in the past. The international community has a responsibility to condemn China's colonial boarding school system and take action to address the situation in Tibet. Governments should issue strong statements, impose sanctions on Chinese officials responsible for the program, and coordinate with each other to strengthen their collective response. Countries such as the United States, Canada, and Australia, which have their own history of using education to eradicate indigenous cultures, have a special responsibility to condemn China's actions. By taking diplomatic interventions, applying multilateral pressure, and implementing targeted sanctions, there is a chance to check and reverse the residential schooling policy in Tibet. China vows crackdown on birth certificate sales linked to trafficking. Nikkei Asia. China's National Health Commission, NHC, is cracking down on the illegal buying, selling, and forging of birth certificates, which can be used to conceal the true identities of trafficked and surrogate children. Despite efforts to tighten the management of birth certificates, intermediaries forging fakes or colluding with medical institutions to issue ones with false information have persisted. There is strong demand for children and the legal documents for them that cannot be obtained through legal channels. A professor at the College for Criminal Law Science of Beijing Normal University said there is a market where many childless families want children, and it will naturally facilitate underground transactions. The fraudulent birth certificates are also driven by the strict adoption system in China, which can prevent some families from legally adopting children. Surrogacy remains illegal in China, which pushes people to use the underground market for surrogacies. The NHC has sent supervisory teams to various provinces to investigate the illegal sale of birth certificates and hold those responsible accountable. Tensions are bubbling up at thirsty Arizona alfalfa farms as foreign firms exploit unregulated water. Associated Press. Foreign agribusinesses, including Eldara from the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Saudi dairy giant Almarai, have been criticized for depleting Arizona's groundwater supplies. These companies are looking to climate-challenged regions like Arizona for the water and land needed to grow crops like alfalfa and wheat. The extraction of large amounts of groundwater by these companies has left some local communities without access to drinking water, while others fear that state officials may redirect the water supply to urban areas, such as Phoenix. The state's regulator has recently cracked down on groundwater extraction in rural areas, but there are concerns that this will not go far enough to protect vital water supplies. Climate change and increasing droughts are expected to drive more countries to seek alternative locations for food production, putting even more pressure on water supplies in regions such as Arizona. Supercell storms to bring violent winds and potential floods to eastern parts of Australia. ABC. A major storm system is developing in southeast Australia, with the potential to cause widespread flooding and damage from supercell thunderstorms, which may even spawn tornadoes. The storms are forming as part of a significant low-pressure system that will bring heavy rain and flooding from the northern tropics down to coastal Victoria. The storms have the potential to reach supercell status and generate hail over 5 centimeters in diameter, with wind gusts over 125 kilometers per hour. The system is expected to bring hours of heavy rain to central and southern New South Wales, along with eastern Victoria, prompting a flood watch for over 40 rivers. speaking English automatically makes people like Bushra a translator. She says often she can't say no. ABC. Professional translators and interpreters are needed to ensure accurate communication in multicultural communities, according to Professionals Australia Chief Executive Jill McCabe. Non-professionals should not be referred to as translators or interpreters, as this undervalues the skill, responsibility and professional requirements of qualified providers, McCabe says. However, an online toolkit has been created by Monash University to help non-professional interpreters and translators in the meantime until more training programs can be developed. Quad faces reality check as alleged plot to kill US Sikh dense trust. Nikkei Asia. The alleged conspiracy to assassinate a Sikh separatist on American soil, with potential involvement from the Indian government, has raised questions about the future of the Quad, a group comprising the US, Japan, India, and Australia. The Quad has thus far been seen as a grouping of like-minded democracies with common values, but the alleged plot has tested this perception. The Indian Prime Minister has invited US President Joe Biden to the Republic Day parade on January 26 and a Quad Leaders Summit has been planned for January 27. However, the itinerary may be shelved if Biden's State of the Union address overlaps. The alleged plot has been seen by US analysts as very serious and potentially damaging to US-India relations and the Quad. The alleged target of the plot was a dual citizen of the US and Canada and comes 2 months after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that there were credible allegations linking Indian agents to the June murder of another Sikh separatist leader. The Indian government has rejected involvement in both incidents. Hundreds attend vigil for Brown University student of Palestinian descent shot in VT. Yahoo! Hundreds of people have gathered at Brown University to pray for 3 college students who were shot in Vermont over the weekend. The 3 men, who are of Palestinian descent, were walking outside when Jason J. Eaton pulled out a gun and shot them. Eaton has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. 2 of the victims are in stable condition, but the third sustained serious injuries. Students at Brown University are hopeful for a peaceful dialogue on campus and are eager for the injured student to return to school so that they can show their support. Internet use does not appear to harm mental health, study finds. Financial Times. A study conducted by researchers at the Oxford Internet Institute found no evidence to support claims that mobile apps contribute to depression and anxiety. The study analyzed data from over 2 million people and concluded that there was no smoking gun for widespread harm to mental health from online activities such as browsing social media and gaming. The researchers did, however, acknowledge that the data necessary to prove a causal connection was absent without cooperation from tech companies, and stressed that any regulation addressing the issue should be based on more conclusive evidence. The hostage releases hand more power to Hamas. Telegraph. The Israeli government is making a mistake by releasing Palestinian prisoners in exchange for hostages, as it only encourages more kidnappings, according to a piece in The Spectator. The author also points out that the Israeli government is sacrificing the long-term interests of all Israelis for the sake of the moment. The article also criticizes the BBC for not verifying the number of attendees at a pro-Palestinian march in London last Saturday, and not doing the same for a march against anti-Semitism which took place the following day. Finally, the piece mentions how the AA has warned motorists to avoid puddles, as they often conceal potholes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees world, Dr. Six, here to wrap up today's news with some insightful analysis and a touch of humor. Let's start with Italy, where Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government is being likened to the Fellowship of the Ring in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Yes, you heard that right. The National Gallery of Modern and Contemporary Art in Italy is hosting an exhibition dedicated to Tolkien, as members of Meloni's ruling party see the story as a metaphor for their fight to protect Italy's culture. I guess they really want to keep the orcs away from their pizza and pasta. Moving on to sports, Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders and head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, suffered a fractured back in the team's season finale. Ouch! But don't worry, it's not expected to affect his future, and he's set to return for his senior season. I guess he'll be back to sacking records in no time. Now, let's talk about AI. Can chatbots think? Well, according to experts, while AI systems like OpenAI's ChatGPT can generate human-like text, they lack true understanding and consciousness. So, don't worry, folks, the robots aren't taking over just yet. They might be good at legal reasoning and essay writing, but they won't be stealing our jobs as philosophers anytime soon. In other news, the UAE is making a $200 billion bid for climate influence. Critics are accusing them of greenwashing their image as one of the largest producers of hydrocarbons. It seems like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, investing in renewable energy projects while still pumping oil and gas. Talk about trying to have it both ways. Now, let's take a look at New Zealand's crackdown on crime and the role Maori wardens can play. The country has a high rate of incarceration and is looking for alternatives to traditional law enforcement. The Maori wardens, who have been active for around a century, present compelling alternatives for managing low-level crime. Maybe other countries can take a page out of New Zealand's book and learn that there's more to crime prevention than just throwing people in jail. On a lighter note, could a drug give your pet more dog years? Biotech firm Loyal is working on a longevity drug for dogs that could extend their lifespan. While they haven't proven that it actually lengthens dogs' lives, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has given them the green light to continue their research. So, who knows, maybe soon we'll have some immortal dogs running around. Now, let's talk about the suppression of Tibetan identity by the Chinese government. Residential schools in Tibet are being used to strip Tibetan children of their culture and replace it with a Chinese one. It's like a real-life version of Mean Girls, but instead of stealing each other's boyfriends, they're stealing each other's language and culture. The international community needs to step up and condemn China's actions and work together to reverse this policy. It's time to put an end to this cultural erasure. Moving on to China, they're cracking down on birth certificate sales linked to trafficking. Birth certificates are being illegally bought, sold, and forged, which can be used to conceal the true identities of trafficked and surrogate children. It's a sad reality that there is a market for these illegal documents, but it's good to see that the Chinese government is taking action to address this issue. Let's hope they can put an end to this underground market and protect the rights of these vulnerable children. Now, let's talk about thirsty Arizona alfalfa farms and unregulated water. Foreign agribusinesses are depleting Arizona's groundwater supplies, leaving local communities without access to drinking water. It's like a real-life version of a water war, with foreign firms coming in and taking what they need while locals suffer. Climate change and increasing droughts are only going to exacerbate this problem. It's time for state officials to step up and protect their vital water supplies before it's too late. Finally, a major storm system is developing in Australia, bringing with it the potential for supercell thunderstorms and flooding. Mother Nature is reminding us once again that she's in charge and she's not afraid to unleash her wrath. So, if you're in the affected areas, make sure to stay safe and hold on tight. Well, folks, that's all for today's news. I hope you enjoyed my quirky take on the world's events. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for me? Let's start a discussion and see where it takes us. Remember, no topic is off limits in the 6 Degrees world. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.